Hello and welcome to episode number 10 of This Bootstrapped Life. This is a series where I share the ups and downs of starting a bootstrapped company, in particular in San Francisco, notoriously expensive place with a lot of interesting characters. And I usually divide this into the business stuff and the personal stuff, where I'm a little more business heavy, I would say. So let's jump right into it. It's actually been a really, really good week. I've been in the middle of what I'm calling this big change in the way I think about business, where I switched towards a more post-scarcity mindset, is what I'm calling it. And it's this idea that I should be playing to win, not necessarily playing to not lose, which is a pretty big shift because up until now, my mindset has generally just been like doing what is necessary just for survival, but not playing so that I like win in the vision that I have in the long term. And there are interesting parallels here with in video games where you often, when you're playing certain, let's say, card games, the move is actually, instead of trying to just survive the next till the next turn, it often is to play into the one or two scenarios that you need in order to actually win the game. Because often you'll lose because you're trying to play around everything, and the reality is, if you play around everything, the odds of you actually winning go down significantly. So it's a pretty big change in mindset, and I've been in the middle of executing it, and my pitches reflect that as well, where I'm also starting to give bigger proposals, bigger numbers, things, and I think a lot of this comes down to following consultants online who share kind of what they're doing too. And one of them is this guy Jason Leo. He's a pretty prolific AI influencer consultant, and he's been sharing kind of his journey in increasing the value he provides and increasing his rates as well. You can't just increase your rates. You actually have to change the way you think about value as well. And there's this book he recommended, The Consulting Bible. And honestly, it has been, I'm like, I just started it a few days ago, but it's been very helpful. One of the biggest things that you read early on in that book is the difference between being the brains and the hands, where, we often conflate consultants as like contractors and freelancers and as all of them being kind of the same thing, but in reality, they're different. If you're a freelancer or on contractor, you're generally operating on a task list. You're essentially, a peer to the employees, the company, you're working with. And it's just a very different mindset. Usually you're working on an hourly basis as well. And so the reality is you're almost, the joke is that you're basically an employee without the benefits. And I don't think that's that far from the truth. I mean, there are good engagements on the freelance side that exist, obviously. But if you want to really chase like the big bucks and you want to create even more value, you kind of have to change your mindset and try to adapt to being more of what actually is a consultant, where you're introducing process, you're taking over more functions potentially, and they're just giving you problems and you're coming up with solutions to them in some holistic sense. You're not just the hands executing a particular task or set of tasks. And the reality is, and your proposal starts to reflect that too, where you no longer break down like line by line, where are hours going for X or Y. It becomes like, here's this outcome that you want, and this is what it's going to cost. And here are potentially extra fees that come on, for different scenarios. And one of actually the things that I've been learning as well is this idea that it's actually quite useful for price discovery of your services to actually provide multiple price points whenever you give a proposal. So instead of just giving like this one proposal that solves a problem you think the client has, you instead try to look ahead to other problems the client will have with whatever they're consulting you for, and try to create almost like bigger packages that handle those things. So it's cool. There's a lot to learn about being a good consultant. And I'm still very much so in the middle of that transition. And to be very clear, I think there's nothing wrong with still having some kind of hourly rate on some level, especially like if you're in this transition like I am. I still provide technical advisory services to a few companies. And so it's still essentially an hourly rate, but my mindset has shifted into, okay, that rate should be different than my what I used to previously charge, let's say for uh, individual contributor type work. Because in that case, it's kind of in between where as a technical advisor, you can still operate hourly, but you're still providing higher leverage guidance potentially. You might be introducing process still and drawing on, years and years of experience. And so I've just pivoted towards, okay, if I'm going to do hourly in some engagements, they're going to be at a higher rate. And what's nice about advisory type work is that it's easier to slot in throughout your day or different parts of your day, as opposed to individual contributor work where you kind of need like deep focus to like get, let's say, a feature done over a couple hours. That's at least what I found, is that it's really difficult to juggle multiple clients where you're doing feature work for them. So this pivot has been helpful, at least for my scheduling purposes, where I can handle, kind of a hybrid of the manager schedule where you have lots of calls and meetings and stuff and maybe events. And then also where you can actually, do things that make money or revenue generating activities. And so those revenue generating activities now are increasingly becoming advisory oriented, or at least just a little higher leverage. So this has been very interesting. I've had 3, I would characterize them as successful pitches in the last week since starting to shift. And they've each been for different clients at different stages. And they've each gone well. One of them was a concrete proposal that went very well. One was sort of a trajectory shift, and that one actually went very well. Again, that client in particular has just been really great to work with, and there's a strong relationship there. And so they actually provided some good suggestions too about how there can be more value created on both sides. And the biggest thing there was that there was a self-awareness where it's like, wait a second, their engineering team is growing, and with Skyporch, things are also starting to change shape. And so there was a realization that each company is kind of going in on this next chapter essentially. And so there was just this awareness that, again, like, I'm providing less value to them over time, and while if I had a scarcity mindset, I would probably want to hold on to that opportunity because it's still like a solid, set of cash flow. There's a realization that I'd rather risk giving up that entire cash flow in client in order to focus on creating more value either for other clients or for them. In this case, it seems like there are opportunities to create more value for them and just do higher leverage things. So that's great, and this is a good reminder where it's like it is all about your mindset too, going into things where you're prepared for anything, going into a given client call, relationship, whatever. And so that was great. And then the third client, this was a prospect actually in the third case, and in that scenario, I was a little more straightforward with the way we operate in terms of projects, and kind of pivoting away from like a staffing model, and they received it well, and they seemed to be keen to proceed on to the next steps of like scoping and all this kind of stuff on like a really big project actually. So again, this is just like in the last week, just a handful of pitches that went well. So it's like there's some promising signals here around this very recent shift, and I'm excited for what that's going to allow us to do. And I think it's just a big part of that is letting go of this idea that like I have to ensure, like I have to just do the minimum, not the minimum, but I have to just like survive, or we have to just survive. And to an extent, I still have parts of that mindset of like, it is all about staying in the game for long enough. But I'm no longer thinking that I have to like cling on to each opportunity, because I'm seeing a lot of opportunities show up. And the reality is you have to have free space, free time in order to really capitalize on those opportunities. Because if you always are sort of operating at like capacity, it becomes very challenging to spring on the right opportunities and the ones that are probably going to be better. And that might be actually like 10x opportunities for both parties. So this is huge. Otherwise, and I'm still thinking about like just how we become more brain oriented over time instead of hand oriented, where we're just like executing set of tasks. So I'm just trying to accept that I will say yes to some unknown bigger projects in some cases, but I'm confident I will figure it out. Is kind of the idea there. And overall, like when it comes to the stuff that we do, whether we're building minimum viable products, doing 0 to 1 type stuff, doing advisory, whatever it is, it's getting easier and easier to figure things out. I think after spending like 13 years in the industry, and you see enough like it's just all pattern matching, honestly, especially now with large language models, it becomes so much easier to approach any novel problem. And so I'm just leveraging all the tools at my disposal and learning and moving very quickly. It's kind of like my current MO. So beyond that stuff, I'm actually very excited this weekend. We're hosting this visionOS hackathon. It's starting tomorrow, which is wild to me. This is my first hackathon that I'm ever hosting. So it's going to be a new experience. I think it's going to go well. I think overall, there's not a whole lot that can really go wrong. I think as long as we have a solid set of food, snacks, beverages, meals at appropriate times, and some fun activities in between, it's going to be a really enjoyable weekend for all involved, I believe. We're going to be embracing, forming connection, amongst each other, while learning and building cool things, I think is the idea. So it is going to be, I think, a fruitful weekend, but regardless, it is still an experiment of sorts. And my hope is that it goes well so that we do more hackathons in this space, because we do have an amazing space here in Hayes Valley, and it feels perfect for hosting a variety of hackathons, maybe with different themes too. Like this one's visionOS, it's a little more niche. And, I think there's just other considerations there because it requires this expensive hardware that obviously not everybody has. And so there's a pretty high barrier, I would say, to entry for this one. But I think we have some other ideas for other hackathons that would attract a broader audience and I think would be pretty cool. And we could probably get sponsors for and all this kind of stuff and make it sustainable. So again, anyways, depends on how this weekend goes in some level. So I'm going to just give it my best shot and we'll see. Beyond that, I think I don't have too much to share else, at the moment. This past week has not been much of a personal development week. I mean, I do see parallels in my personal life, with the business stuff I just talked about, as far as being like in this post-scarcity mindset where I'm not, I have the luxury of not being month to month, with our expenses, either personally or with the business. So we can take some bets. But yeah, overall, I have a little bit more of a healthy, detached connection to things that previously I didn't necessarily have. And I think it makes sense for us. I think now it'll allow us to just approach more valuable opportunities. So that's kind of life right now, if I'm being honest. I think next week I'll have a little bit more, share between the hackathon, how that goes, and how meeting cool people, all this kind of stuff, whatever goes on. But that's all for now. I think last week I kind of gave like a really good update personally on what was going on. I shared a lot of updates on health, on just like activities that are, just food for my soul, like singing and starting to get into poetry again. So I don't really have much more to update on that. But I mean, last weekend I had a good weekend. Like, I have a best friend that's in town, and we went out to like North Beach and the marina and all this stuff. And so, I do make time for these outings, but I don't really have anything like concrete to share personally for this. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye for now.